Welcome all. My name is Kerry Roberts, and I'm representing the Strategic Studies Department here at Joint Special Operations University. Today, we are pleased to present a distinguished speaker, including audience question and answer. This session is unclassified and will be recorded and posted to the JSOU network. Please keep in mind, the views and opinions expressed by all participants do not necessarily reflect the views, opinions, or policy of the U.S. government, the Department of Defense, or U.S. Special Operations Command. If you have questions after the session, please email thinkjsou@socom.mil as indicated on the slide. Since unsettled weather is always a possibility, if you lose connection, just rejoin the session. If the internet failed you, you can always dial in with the phone numbers on your registration confirmation email. Today's moderator is Mr. Jack Guy, outreach faculty here at JSOU. He will introduce the program and today's guests.
Thank you, Kerry. Good morning to everyone. My name is Jack Guy, and I am an adjunct instructor at the Joint Special Operations University located in Tampa, Florida. I want to welcome everyone to another online interview of Think JSOU. Think JSOU is an ongoing series that explores research and publications of the JSOU faculty, resident senior fellows, leading academics, and the wider SOF and international security community. The online collection includes interviews and conversations with authors and researchers and is intended to supplement existing publications, articles, and other active discussions. We encourage everyone to explore the complete Think JSOU collection by reviewing our online offerings on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the All Partner Access Network, or APAN. Today, we are honored to have Mr. Andrew Strand, Director of Allied Information Technology for the Army's PEO for Enterprise Information Systems. AIT is responsible for a global security cooperation and assistance portfolio, which includes foreign military sales, defense institution building, international education and training, and various other building partner capacity programs. Mr. Strand holds an MA in International Affairs from the University of Oklahoma and a BA in History from the Citadel. He is certified at the highest professional acquisition level in both program management and information technology. He has twice been nominated for the Assistant Secretary of the Army Agency Acquisition Executive Excellence in Leadership Award and once as a Department of Defense Rising Star. Allied Information Technology's mission is to enhance U.S. and partner nation security and interoperability through delivering non-standard command, control, communications, computers, cyber, and intelligence capabilities under the auspices of defense, security cooperation, and assistance programs, primarily using the foreign military sales process. These solutions are tailored according to host nation requirement and coalition standards for interoperability, enabling foreign partners to better secure and defend their individual sovereignty and increasing their capacity for contributions to the broader collective security posture. AIT's work supports mutual U.S. and allied interests by strengthening bilateral defense partnerships, enhancing coalition building through interoperability, and increasing the readiness of our partners in uncertain, complex, and potentially hostile security environments. Andy, we thank you so much for joining us today. This presentation is timely given the re-energized topic of great power competition, where defining the word competition has become a full-time endeavor for planners and policymakers. I suspect that this should become part of the discussion today. I know that you have a short, briefing prepared, so let us allow you to introduce your topic and then open the door to questions for the remainder of the session. To the audience, you can ask questions by clicking on the Q&A button at the bottom of the page. And we ask that everybody please mute your computers. Andy, the floor is yours.
Jack, thank you so much. Good to see your face again. And Kerry, thank you for putting this on and giving me the opportunity. I don't take it lightly, and it is a real privilege. You know, Jack, I think just to kick this off, it might be fruitful to spend just a few minutes by way of background on kind of how we got here from about 6 years ago when this organization was started. As you know, and we talked about many times, the global proliferation of information technology over the past quarter century has unlocked seemingly limitless potential across all domains of human activity, and the ability to create and manipulate, and distribute, store information instantaneously. It has fundamentally changed the way we approach just about everything we do. There's simply no question that these advances have enabled enabled sectors like science, medicine, space exploration, education, finance, and of course defense, just to name a few. But this increasing dependence we have on IT systems and tools, it also exposes us to some unique vulnerabilities and threats, which has driven DoD to prioritize its focus on the information dominance space, and not just for our own joint force, but more importantly for this discussion, for our allies and our partners. And so our organization supports that priority and the entire security cooperation enterprise by developing and integrating, delivering, and then sustaining, which is an operative word in this discussion, non-standard tailored C5I capabilities on behalf of allies and partners around the globe under the auspices of various security assistance programs, but primarily using the foreign military sales process to get that done. Now, it's important to keep in mind that these solutions are tailored according to host nation requirements. You mentioned that in your intro, because by enabling foreign partners, or in order to enable foreign partners, we've got to take them where they are. So we'll probably talk a little bit about absorptive capacity here in this conversation, but taking a country where it's at, but what kind of infrastructure it has, what their current architecture looks like, what their levels of sophistication are. Those are all really important to consider when we're talking about delivering these kind of solutions to build up their capacity. There's really not a cookie cutter approach to doing work in the ones and zeros space. And so, what we intend and hope to do is to support mutual U.S. and allied interests by strengthening those, partnerships and enhancing the coalition building by increasing interoperability and readiness of our partners. It's very much a collective security theme in the work that we do. A couple of the key takeaways before I pull up my slide. I think very important to talk about how requirements are defined. Executing FMS work or foreign military sales work in the C5I domain can be particularly daunting due to what are often highly complex and technical requirements. The geographic combatant commands have, often have limited resources, and the personnel assigned forward to offices of defense cooperation and security cooperation offices in countries around the world are just not always able to ensure sufficient fidelity for these kinds of requirements before they get pushed back through the enterprise for implementation and execution by the respective service component. So by what we've, maybe one quick anecdote to help us understand why this is important. Jack, I've told you this one before, but one of the first cases that we did about 6 years ago was for the Bulgarian military police, and the letter of request, which is the basic requirements document that comes from an embassy, a country team, back through the Defense Security Cooperation Agency and down through the service component, was for a standalone biometrics capability, and the price tag on this LOR was $40,000. Now, I'm not a technical guy by background, but even I could tell that we were probably missing a couple zeros because you really can't do anything for $40,000. So I sent back about 10 general questions through all the hops to get back to the country. And long story short, there had been a few members of the Bulgarian military police that had, as part of the coalition in Afghanistan, they had been on the border crossings using the Seek devices that many of us are familiar with. And somebody went on Google and found out that, you know, there was a company in Florida, I believe, that was selling these devices for $5,000 a piece, and they wanted 8 of them. Now, the wheels start to turn. You say, well, what about the data sharing agreements? What about the server to process the data? What about a server room to host the server? How about just things like an HVAC to keep the server room cool? I mean, all these things are worth considering if you want to have a biometrics capability for your military police forces. So in the end, that $40,000 requirement became around $2 million, and that still got just a basic capability. So I sort of had in that moment an epiphany about how those requirements were getting defined downrange, getting all the way back to us. They weren't executable. There was nothing actionable about it, and so I felt like the only way we could really get after this and prevent spending good money after bad money, which we seem want to do so often, is to get ahead of the requirement. You know, have a government team on the ground that can work directly with the Offices of Defense Cooperation and make sure those requirements are written correctly, so that by the time they get to us through the system at the execution level, we know they're executable, we know they're actionable, we know they nest well within the theater's campaign plan for those countries, and we're already able to start working some rapid acquisition methodology to get those requirements executed for the country. So I think you know, by embedding our project management teams and technical experts within close proximity of the GCC, we are able to define those requirements properly, and we shave tremendous amounts of time off the FMS process, which frankly is one of the primary concerns of our country customers. Just tends to take too long. Let me touch very quickly on absorptive capacity. We talked about it. Not every foreign partner is prepared institutionally, technologically, or even culturally in some cases to implement the latest and greatest that the U.S. defense industry has to offer. It is possible to overwhelm a country's force structure with too much capability too quickly. So one of the things we've tried to do to achieve, you know, effective results is to deliver in a time phase, sort of crawl, walk, run approach. So we'll scale solutions methodically over time and according to sort of an IT campaign plan, so that we can help build institutional confidence, you earn buy-in from the host nation senior leaders, and ultimately help the U.S. government know when, where, and in fact whether further investment is desirable. So I think with that said, you know, I'm going to share my screen here, and let's see if I can get the right one. Okay. Bear with me 1 second, Jack. Okay. I love technology, Jack.
I know you do.
We all do. Okay. Let's see if I can pull this up. Well, okay. Well, it was there a second ago. Okay. Now maybe I can do that. Well, Jack, it's not coming up.
Andrew, if you click share screen and then click the slide, normally that's the sequence that I do.
Ah, I got you. Okay.
Try that.
Okay. How's that?
There you
There
go.
it is.
Okay. Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about the mission, pretty straightforward, you know, but I think what I'd like to do with this slide is just explain how we went from really not doing this in the Army 6 years ago to today, and kind of what's driving that, and then kind of share some of the types of solutions that we're helping countries with. Back in 14, 15 timeframe, this group will recall the situation in Crimea, where it was annexed by Russia, and Congress came out in full-throated support of a $350 million influx of non-lethal aid into Ukraine, and you can start to see in 16 and 17 on the growth trends side that there was about 50 million, just under 50 million of that money came down to us ultimately to go help the Ukrainian MOD really modernize its networks, introduce command and control platforms. We built out a cybersecurity operations center. We did some logistics and supply chain capability. We built out their new SOF training center with just state-of-the-art equipment, and then just did some basic infrastructure modernization for them over the next couple of years. I don't have the pictures with me, but I could show one of the things I showed to talk to General Linder about just a couple years ago was these pictures of dirt floors and buildings to 2 years later, where we had what could be equated to a smaller version of what you'll see in building 507 in Kuwait and at the Seaflick, that war room with connected screens, feeds coming in with ISR capability and all that, and we built this in just under about 18 months from dirt to ribbon cutting. It was a tremendous success. We had so much support from not only our own ambassador Yovanovitch, who was there throughout our tenure there, but also from the senior leadership at the MOD, who really, I think, because we were so quick about it, and because we were able to bring them capability they could actually use in real time, I think what happened after that was that the folks in the building started to recognize that we could spend a little bit of money to get a lot of effect, and so the return on investment for that 45 to 50 million dollars was just huge. In fact, the Chad there in Ukraine ultimately reached out to General Scaparrotti, the EUCOM commander at the time, and said, "Hey, I really want to take advantage of these kinds of capabilities so that we don't waste the effort that you guys have made. Let my senior staff visit USER headquarters and learn how to use all these mission command tools and train with your staff on day-to-day command and control, battle staff operations, and battle rhythm stuff." And so I think we saw a lot of success with that, and that kind of dominoed into a situation where they wanted to give us a lot more money very quickly to go work in the Baltics. And then, of course, Jack, you and I, we were doing some work in Afghanistan as well. And you'll recall you and I ran into a general officer at a hotel in Dubai on our way back to the States. And he said, I think you guys really should go talk to Rich Holcomb down at USASOC. I think that ODAs and teams that are out in the field could benefit knowing that there are capabilities and there's an organization that can deliver these capabilities to countries that they're working in. So we went down and saw Mr. Holcomb, and of course he ultimately pushed us out to see General Braga at SOCPAC, and really the dominoes fell from there, and we started getting feedback from multiple COCOMs and TSOCs that this is these types of capacity building capabilities were something they were interested in getting us to do. So I think some of the drivers of this growth, and I know this slide is a bit dated. I wanted to have FY21 and 22 on there, which I think gets up near $500 million in total case value. This is being driven by what you mentioned early in the program, Jack. This is about a shift from sort of pure CT to great power competition, and what are the things that we can do to gain the asymmetric advantage in this space. And so we've got a lot of new funding appropriations that are driving us to do more of this kind of work in that ones and zeros domain. So you got the Counter Russia Influence Fund, which we use all the time. We have a new Counter Chinese Influence Fund, which we expect will drive so much of our work in Indo-PACOM. In fact, Jack, I just did a civets last week with General Braga and his staff again there at USARPAC, and we're doing another follow-up today. But there are so many opportunities, low-hanging fruit that we can get after in spaces like cyber security and information operations that I know you and I have spent quite a lot of time talking together and with him about. But there are other BPC funding options out there, and one of the things we try to do for our customers at the ODC level is to help them navigate what funds are available because of the relationships we try to keep at OSD and with DSCA. You move further down the chart, I think ones and zeros generally, there's an appetite for better capability across the board. Coalition capability targets, you think about NATO, one of the things that countries either who belong to NATO or are aspiring to become members of NATO are trying to do is meet capability targets, and that tends to drive the requirements as well. And then of course our growing relationships at the COCOMs and with TSOCs in particular have really helped us in the planning process get better at being proactive instead of reactive. FMS tends to be as a system very reactive to requirements. If you think about a couple different PEOs like PEO ammo, I'm going to oversimplify a case here, but if you've got a country coming in for 10 million rounds of 7.62, and I want every 10th one to be a tracer, that's a pretty straightforward reaction to a request. In this space, it's better, it behooves us to get way more proactive so that we're looking 5 and 10 years out, not just at what kind of capability can we push out to a country, but what is the end state? What's the outcome that both the country and we are looking to accomplish. And so in our coordination with the TSOCs and the COCOMs, we can get ahead of what we're ultimately trying to accomplish, and as I said before, kind of build an IT campaign plan, 5 and 10 years out, and then work backwards from that in accordance with what we know are going to be available funding streams to get that accomplished. And of course, we got to worry about contracting and the acquisition process, and so we try to overlay everything we do on a day-to-day basis onto that bigger 50,000 foot view of the world. So lastly, I just point to you can look down through some of those capabilities and solutions. This is by no means an exhaustive list. One of the cool things about a new organization is that there's pros and cons. Trust me, because it started with just me and one other guy 6 years ago. But one of the pros is that it gives us sort of a blank slate, a blank canvas to work on. And so while we represent the PEO and it has 50 some odd programs of record, because of the uniqueness of how we deliver capability. So I use PEO ammo again as an example. There is a PM under that PEO that delivers standard ammo across the globe to partners. We are we're delivering exclusively non-standard capability, which means I don't tap into any of the PMs within the PEO to go deliver a capability to a foreign partner. And so we're a little unique in the PEO world that we just don't deliver what the PEO builds for the Army. And so that's lends itself to a broader canvas of opportunity. So even if the PEO isn't doing something in this particular ones and zeros space or a particular area, we have the ability as the International Programs Office to take a look at a bigger set of problems that countries and face and that theaters are trying to get after and really attack that because we've got access to contracts and lots of smart people. So Jack, that's about what I've got for my brief. I had just one slide there, but I wanted to, I know I've talked for a good 15-20 minutes. I wanted to turn it back to you to see if you had any follow-ups. Over.
Sure, and you can, if you'd like, you can take the slide down. That's good. So let's pull a string on some of this. Let's imagine that you're a team leader someplace on the ground and you see a need locally for infrastructure support. How do they get to you? How do they go from where they are and move that through channels to get the kind of support they believe, and it won't cost a lot, but it will make an enormous impact on the way things are being done in that particular country? How do they get to you?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, one of the things we've spent a lot of time doing over the last few years is just educating our own enterprise about the fact that this capability exists. I can't tell you how many times I've sat in front of another U.S. government interagency organization, and they'll look at me and say, what company do you work for? And I just remind them, I'm a government employee. I work for Uncle Sam like you, and this office was just stood up, relatively short time ago, and so one of my primary jobs is to just reach out to as many people as I can across the enterprise and let them know that we have an office, that we use the foreign military sales process, much like they've, an ODC chief, for instance, he knows how to get an airborne unit stood up. He knows how to get, go get ammo. But there's very often a hard stop when we get into this domain, right? Because that might be an SF officer, it might be a foreign area officer who doesn't have a lot of background or technical acumen for cyber-related and technical requirements, and so that may slide to the bottom of the pile. In this case, we're trying to get the word out that there are people who do understand how to get these requirements executed, and so part of my being here today, at your suggestion, was to educate this audience and a wider SOF audience that there are people in the Army who represent the government, who have locations all around the globe. I've got reps in every COCOM right now that can answer the call. And so just to tease it out a little more, Jack, if you're an ODA team lead and you're in Niger, for instance, there is a security cooperation office in that country at the embassy that handles all of the requirements that ultimately get turned into letters of request. One of the things we're trying to do is reach out to every SCO and ODC in the world and give them an info paper, a capabilities briefing, so that when something like this comes up, say they want to build out a joint operations and intelligence fusion cell, and they just don't know how to get that started, we're the team that can go to country, get on the ground, do a site survey, look at the requirements, look at the infrastructure, talk to the functionals at the host nation Ministry of Defense level to find out what we need to do to get the process started and get those requirements written correctly. So it's not perfect yet, and it's not, I think we have a long way to go, but we're making serious headway, and I think that growth trend chart demonstrates that.
How does what you do differ from the normal 333 kind of project work that's done within the security cooperation realm? How is it different with AIT?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's another thing that we've evolved on over time. I'll go back to Ukraine as an example. In a typical FMS case, you get the requirement down through the system, and then we go deliver our portion of it. One of the things we learned in Ukraine very quickly was that you can deliver all sorts of cool toys and shiny objects, but if you don't have if you're not paying attention to how you're going to sustain those systems long term, the licensing, the training that goes along with it, and really build that out over years, not months, you're gonna end up with a paperweight, essentially. And so one of the things we did in Ukraine was we convinced the MOD and the ODC to build an additional letter of request that would support senior advisors on each of the functional capabilities that we were providing to those teams. We brought in senior advisors who are still there today, who advise the MOD at the doctrine level, at the doctrine and policies, or .mil PF level, to make sure that the capabilities are supported by policy and doctrine that will help to proliferate a wider use of the capabilities and sort of institutionalize it. And so instead of being just a pure FMS group, we're trying to take a more holistic approach to the sort of broader security cooperation enterprise.
Let me ask, we've got a question. Does AIT focus only on Army land component projects, or do you do maritime and air component projects as well?
That's a great question. There is a DSCA sometimes has some difficulty making distinctions on these letters of request, because while they may be while it may be a maritime request, there are linkages. It's not always just, it's not always just a Navy requirement, because you're looking at, I'll give you an example, Jack. Right now in South America, we're working with SOC South on a requirement to build fusion centers in 3 separate countries, intel fusion centers that allow them to combat illegal fishing. You talk about counter China priorities. China's all over the eastern seaboard in South America, and we've got countries down there that really want to get after that. So normally you'd say, well, if it has to do with the water or the Navy, then that would go to the Navy. Except in this case, what they're actually trying to get after is data, and you can't really do big data collection out on a boat. So we actually work a lot with the Navy. A case will come in, get implemented, and Navy will have a portion of it, and then Army will also have a portion of it. And so we're doing that in South America. There's a lot of maritime domain awareness projects that we're working in South America, as well as in Eastern Europe, and obviously in Ukraine as well. So it's a good question. It's not always easy to make those distinctions, but I think more and more we're seeing a connection with what PM 740 is doing out of the PEO, the Navy's PEO, for sort of their equivalent to EIS in the Navy. We're doing a lot of work with them, and DSCA recognizes that they're cutting a lot more resources for programs like 740 and AIT to work together on projects like that.
Earlier, you made a comment that working in Ukraine, that you provided state-of-the-art technology for them. Are you always looking at providing state-of-the-art technologies, or is that on a need basis?
Yeah, I think it goes back to absorptive capacity. We touched on this a little bit. The answer is no, Jack, we're not. The truth is, there are many of the countries we're working in are still developing countries. When you take Afghanistan, for instance, it's very difficult to put in state-of-the-art technology into a country where, frankly, the literacy rate is so low that you have to take the folks where they are. And so we're doing, we do anything from sort of basic infrastructure and basic network modernization, helping countries go from, or MODs go from using Gmail to giving them a NIPR and a SIPR capability. That's one, I think, good example of a basic capacity building solution that gets them more secure and able to communicate. One other example I'd use is personnel and pay systems. We think about what it means for a soldier in Iraq to know that he's going to get paid on time, and that all of his records and personnel are updated so that his paycheck reflects that he got a promotion, that he got a higher degree, so that he gets that extra pay. That is a very basic and simple capability that can go a long way to help securing a country and making them less dependent on us, quite frankly.
I have a question that it's a little longer, but bear with me. The question is, what are your thoughts on how to get the security cooperation community to start thinking more holistically on security cooperation activities? For example, sometimes the U.S. sells capabilities to a country, but does not include, in the FMS case, the necessary IT and cyber defense infrastructure to protect the capability. Can AIT assist with that, and what would you suggest to ensure a more holistic approach that it is pursued?
Yeah, that's another great question. You think about the billions and billions of dollars that DoD pours into huge weapons systems and platforms across the globe. You know, you think the Joint Strike Fighter and the F-35 and Patriot batteries and all of these sophisticated systems. You got to think kind of backwards. Do those countries then have the network infrastructure and the types of capabilities that are going to allow them to, do they have the cybersecurity infrastructure in place to prevent attacks on these major weapon systems? I mean, everything that we deliver now has some sort of ones and zeros attached to it. And as you've said many times, there are any number of ways to infiltrate these big weapons systems. So we've got to do a better job across the board, I think, of zooming out from our individual foxholes, our security assistance lanes, and think bigger about how we're going to protect these systems that we're sending, these weapons systems that we're sending to our partners, because it's just an ever increasing, as I said in my sort of opening, the increasing dependence on ones and zeros leaves us vulnerable. And so I think everybody from the department on down to the execution level, at my level, has to be thinking of how we're going to get more holistic, think bigger about how it all fits together.
Let's talk about funding for just a second. A TSOC has priority countries that it wants to support and help. What's the funding procedures for the TSOC itself, and then when their teams out within the region have needs, how does that work to get from team to TSOC and then into the pipeline?
Well, it varies slightly between COCOMs, but typically there will be a security cooperation office at a COCOM, usually in the J5, that receives a collection of requirements from ODCs and stakeholders across the region. That can include the TSOC, the component commands, and they collect those at the COCOM. The COCOM has a budget, several different lines of budget, but it has a budget from State Department, sort of discretionary funding that it can use for, like, 333 is an authority that releases funding to respective COCOMs with a certain hundreds of millions of dollars that it can go spend. And then the COCOMs work back with OSD and DSCA to sort of prioritize which countries it wants to do work in. And then, of course, as you get more fidelity of particular requirements, say at the TSOC, they can push for certain requirements to get approved. And so it typically is a 1 or 2 year process to get those funds approved for certain projects. But once you have, say, if a certain country has X amount of X millions of dollars that it can spend, then it's up to that ODC to say, okay, this is what we're going to spend it on based on the prioritization from the COCOM and OSD. So again, I'd say to those team leads out there, you really want to find out from the ODC or the SCO in your country what funding is available for that country in terms of its security assistance budget, and then what are the things you're competing with, and make a strong case, and we can help you make that case. And this is part of, I think, where we can help, is to make a stronger case for these types of capabilities than has been made in the past.
That makes sense. As we begin to wrap this up, let me ask you a question. What are the 3 or 4 points you want listeners to take away from this that are the most meaningful in your view in terms of how we can build capacity in a partner nation and at the levels that we can do it?
Yeah, no, Jack, thanks. Look, I think I would really focus on that. I mean, requirements definition really is the most important piece of what we do, and so I would hand out this is my virtual business card to everybody listening here and beyond. And I know Jack and Carrie will provide my information to the group. But I think we have to do a better job of getting ahead of these requirements and making sure they're actionable by the time they get to us. That's number one. Number two is, don't think that any idea is too small or too big for us to go out and handle. As Jack mentioned before, we do lots of big stuff, but we also do boutique sort of niche capability in countries that have maybe a higher level of sophistication. So we can do some big data stuff, we can do some IO stuff, some influence stuff, but we can also build some basic capability. And so it's important to not to pigeonhole yourself. If you think there's a capability you want to see implemented, send it our way and let us take a hard look at it. And then finally, that education piece, Jack, is so important. We've got to continue beating the drum. This domain is not going away anytime soon. In fact, all we see are from the department on down is an increased sensitivity to cyber attacks and to making sure that we're protecting our infrastructure, and that we increase our gains in places like South America and Africa, where China and Russia, among a few others, are asserting their will by claiming the network high ground. And we've got to do a better job of not just combating that, but investing in these kinds of capabilities that will ultimately, because of our collective security environment, help us reduce our own footprint in some of these areas so that we can defend ourselves better.
Well, thank you. Andy, this has been a extraordinary time sharing your time and expertise with us today. And so we do extend our thanks and for giving us this. Let me just say to the listeners, for feedback on the session or any Think JSOU activity, please contact us at thinkjsou@socom.mil. I'd like to close by once again encouraging everyone to explore the complete Think JSOU collection by subscribing through the library or on one of the social media channels on, for example, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, or APAN. Additionally, US SOCOM Library is an exceptional resource for checking out electronic books or to download past and present JSOU monographs through the JSOU Press. You can always check out upcoming courses and events on our website, which is www.socom.mil/JSOU. This series is brought to you by the Department of Strategic Studies of the Joint Special Operations University. And we thank you all for watching and participating. Andy, thank you again.
Jack, thanks so much.